Okay, so today we're talking unseen poetry, and I'm going to give you a method for analysing any poem that you've never seen before if you're going to write an essay on it in an exam situation. We're specifically focused here on AQA's Literature Paper 2 and the unseen poetry questions there, and I'm going to talk about the first part of it, the first poem that you get, and I'll do another video later on about comparing poems with unseen poetry. Okay, now the first thing I want to say about any poem that you've never seen before that you've got to write an essay about is, lots of people think about poetry like it's some sort of puzzle, like it's a crossword puzzle, and if you put all the different bits in place and go through all the different clues, you'll get the eventual answer, what the poet actually meant. And I want you to encourage you not to think about it like that, because most poets don't write like that. What I want you to encourage you to do when you think about poetry, and this is generally when you're thinking about poetry, but particularly when you've got to write an exam essay on a poem you've never seen before, is to think about the poem like it's a picture, right? A painting. Okay, now on that painting, there's usually some things that we can sort of factually agree about, and things that we can think, right, that is pretty much, we can all agree that that is true. But then there's interpretation. So if you look at this picture here, we can tell that there is one person in this picture, right? And that's something we could all factually agree on. But then there's interpretation on that, on how you think this person is feeling. Some people might think that he's feeling a little bit smug, or some people might think he's feeling a little bit devious, or some people might think that he's just feeling generally quite happy. And there will be different clues in there, like the shape of his eyes, or like the slight upturn on the corner of his mouth, or whatever. Okay, all of that kind of thing is down to interpretation and how you look at it. And it's the same with poetry. There'll be some things where you can say, right, that is factually true about the poem, but then a lot of it will be down to, well, that word kind of makes it feel like this person is feeling like this. So keep that in mind as we're going through this process. I'm going to give you a stage-by-stage process with an example question. So first off, here's our example question. As usual, what I'd like you to do is if you pause the video with this example question up here, and then just read the poem and read the question. So pause it now. And I'm going to assume that everybody's done that now. Now, stage one, the first thing that we do is to look at the question, right? Now, the question's down at the bottom, so it seems counterintuitive. You want to read the poem first. Read the question first, because the question will direct you to what you're looking for in the poem. So in this case, in The Richest Poor Man in the Valley, how does a poet present ideas about living a happy and contented life? Now, let's say, how does the question have been, how does a poet present ideas about the weather, or ideas about divorce, or ideas about whatever it is? You're going to read the poem differently depending on the question. So stage one is always, step one, look for the question first. Once you've looked at the question, you're going to read through the poem, and you're going to have a pen in hand, and you're going to try and start annotating things, right? For me, what I would do is read the poem first all the way through and get a basic sense of what it's about. That's step two, right? A basic sense of what the poem is about. And if you've got time, you can write yourself a little generic sentence on, this poem is about a war, it's about two people being in love with each other, it's about, get that basic factual information. Now, this needs to be simple. You're not looking for the answer to the poem or the deeper meaning behind it. You're just looking to, right, this is the basics, right? Second time, stage three, when you read it through, you're going to annotate, right? Now, I've talked about this in lots of previous videos, but if you've never seen one of those before, pen in hand, as you're reading, you go through, you're circling, underlining any words or phrases that jump out at you that will tell you something about, in this case, living a happy and contented life. So anything to do with somebody being happy or not happy, or how they feel about their life in general, their overall life, that's what we're looking for, right? So I'm going to show you, this is my annotated version of the poem. And what I've tried to do here is circle and underline stuff. Anytime I circle something, I label up, first off, the effect, right? The effect of that word or phrase. How does it make me think or feel? So now we're getting into our interpretation thing here, right? So in a little phrase like on line 6 of this poem, inside his heart was fat with sun, right? With that, it kind of feels like, if your heart is fat with sun, it feels like you're incredibly positive, or you're very satisfied. The fact that it's fat with sun, you could zoom in on that particular word. It's not literally happening, so the technique being used as a metaphor. If I can add in a technique to my effect, then great. But we always want to go, what's the effect? And then have we got a technique to go with it? If we've just got an effect of a word, right, it makes you think the poet is this or whatever. Great. Okay. Now, if you go through all of those, you can, again, pause it if you really want to and have a look at all of my annotations on there and see the sorts of things that I've come up with. Then what I want to do is try and come up with some sort of argument, right? Now, that is stage 4. Once we've annotated and gone through stage 4, we're going to try and come up with some sort of argument. So we've got an actual essay. We're not just writing random facts about the poem. We've got something we want to say, some big, clear points we want to make. And these are like the main effects of the poem. Now, what I'll try and do is bullet point those main effects down the side of the poem. So I've got a plan of what I'm going to write. In this case, if you have a look at the bullet points I put next to this poem, I'm going to say that in this poem, wealth is represented as being just for show. So we've got bits in here like Harry didn't care for things that other people prize, like money, houses, banks, and lies, right? All of those things seem a bit excessive, and it seems like they're quite false because all the wealth is sort of connected with lies. So that isn't making him happy and contented, if we go back to our question, right? Wealth is just for show. Real happiness in this poem is shown to be on the inside, and it's to do with friendship as well. Right, so it's not wealth and external things, it's internal things like emotions and friendship and all that kind of thing. Those are my two big main points. And you'll see, if you look through the annotations I've got plenty of quotations and things like that tied into those main points that are going to help me prove those main points. So now, when I come to write my essay, all I'm going to do is write about those two big points and then prove it with a bunch of quotations and the techniques that are being used. So I'm using some technical analysis, I'm using quotations, explaining those quotations and the effect of those quotations in a bit of detail. I'm not talking about everything in this poem. I probably won't use all of my annotations. As long as I prove my two big points and I've got that argument, I will have an essay and I will get decent marks.